Hello and welcome back to House of Crime. Today's story is going to be taking us to Long Beach, California. Long Beach is known for its beautiful coastline, laid-back lifestyle, and waterfront attractions. As of 2020, it had a population of over 400,000 residents and is the 42nd most populous city in all of the United States. Taking you back all the way to February 4th, 1952, there was a little boy named Thomas Silverstein, who was later known as Terrible Tommy, which we'll get into in a little bit, was born in Long Beach. Terrible Tom was born to his mother, Virginia Conway. She was divorced from Thomas's biological dad when she was still pregnant with him, and remarried soon after. She married somebody named Thomas Conway, who Thomas, our killer, identified with as his real dad. Then Mama Bear decided again that she was going to get divorced and married another guy named Sid, who finally legally adopted Thomas. Now, Thomas didn't have the most stable of upbringings. It was said that his mom was incarcerated for a bit before she had Thomas, and that was for an armed robbery that she was involved in. And as a kid, Thomas was bullied. He was awkward, shy, and would often come home crying because he had been bullied or beaten up. His mother, being the oh-so-nurturing type, told him that if he came home crying one more time, she would be waiting for him at the other end and would beat him again. Needless to say, I'm sure this caused all sorts of issues for a child growing up in such an insecure house. At just the age of 14, he was sent away to juvenile detention center for the first time. That was for stealing a car and assaulting a cop. He was locked up for 4 years, but then was arrested again soon after he was released. While in juvie, he learned pretty quickly that you have to fight to avoid being abused. After getting out and arrested again at the age of 19, he was sent to San Quentin in California for armed robbery that he had committed. San Quentin is the oldest prison in California. It opened up in 1852, and it's the state's only death row for male inmates. It has a gas chamber that hasn't been used since the 90s and has been the home to many notorious inmates, including Charles Manson. But that's for another time. Anyways, so Tommy, he served his 4 years and was let out on parole, but again was arrested for a string of armed robberies. But, get this, not only with his cousin, but also with his dad. Yep, looks like the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. This time, though, he was sentenced to 15 years for those robberies and was to serve out those years in the U.S. Penitentiary in Leavenworth, Kansas. Built in 1913, this penitentiary started off in the 1800s as a fort and quickly turned into a prison. Today, it's considered a medium security prison. While at the penitentiary, he developed strong ties with the Orion Brotherhood, a neo-Nazi prison gang based in the U.S. that has about 15,000 to 20,000 members located in and out of the prison systems. Gang members are considered members for life. There is no getting out. The only way out is by dying. And that means either by natural causes or at the hands of others. Thomas earned the name Terrible Tom by his deeds and fearless attitude. His first murder came when he was in prison. He killed an inmate named Danny Atwell, a fellow co-prisoner who refused to serve as a mule for the drugs being moved throughout the prison. Danny was stabbed multiple times by a makeshift weapon. The conviction for that murder was eventually overturned because the credibility of the jailhouse informants was under question. However, it is assumed and considered that he was responsible for that death. Tommy had initially received a life sentence in prison and was sent to Marion, Illinois, which was considered a high-security prison at that time. The prison in Marion was first built in 1963 to replace the maximum security prison on Alcatraz Island in San Francisco, which closed that same year. Once in Marion, Thomas was housed in a place called the Control Unit. Basically, solitary confinement kept only for prisoners who engage in the most extreme management problems, like killing other people while in prison. Now, while locked up in this prison, he already had one life sentence under his belt. And at this time, good old Terrible Tom did it again. He murdered another inmate with the help of a second. This time, the inmate was a black inmate named Robert Chappelle, who was a part of a rival prison gang. Thomas and his friend reached into Robert's cell during a recreation period and strangled him with a cord. It is said that they did this as a favor to the rival gang known as the Mexican Mafia. For this murder, he was again handed a second life sentence. I mean, at this point, why would he even care? He already had one. And he didn't, because he did it again for the third time. Right after Robert's murder, another inmate named Raymond Lee Smith, aka Cadillac, was transferred to Marion, and from the moment that he stepped foot in there, he was plotting Tommy's death as revenge. So, as they so easily had done before in a high-security prison, Terrible Tommy and his new buddy Clayton, Fountain, got together and killed Cadillac with improvised weapons fashioned from bed frames and towel rods. So aside from being able to do these little crafts on the side and come up with these weapons, not only did they kill him, they stabbed him 67 times, and then they dragged his body back and forth on a catwalk in front of other cells so that everybody could see. And guess what he got? Another good old life sentence. That ought to stop him. So after that mess, and clearly knowing they needed to do more, a group of unarmed officers were assigned to help bring order back to the cell block where Thomas and Clayton were housed. One of those officers was Merle Eugene Klutz, and from the moment that he came, Thomas was reportedly obsessed with him and began plotting his murder. And on October 22, 1983, he made good on those plots. With the help of another inmate, he stabbed Klutz 40 times. As a direct result of those murders, the prison went into lockdown for the next 23 years, which meant that all inmates of that prison were locked in their cells for the majority of the day. It was transformed into a supermax prison. Again, clearly knowing that they needed to do more, they kept Thomas in the tightest security unit with the lights on 24 hours a day. He was kept naked for the first 6 months and watched around the clock. They took his boxers. For the first 18 months, he was housed in a basement cell that didn't have any hot water or access to outdoor recreation. Realizing that Thomas had absolutely nothing to lose, the guards quickly realized that they had no way of controlling him or taking away things as punishment. I mean, they even had his undies. As a result, they started giving him privileges such as TV and drawing materials for limited times during the day and week. As a result, he took up drawing and was pretty good at it, but he wasn't allowed to enter any of his art in any kind of show, which I guess is a thing for prisoners where they can sell their art for money, which benefits different things. He also reportedly did 2,000 sit-ups a day and 1,000 push-ups every day to keep fit and busy. He did them in groups of hundreds. As for his art, the art that he drew was from his point of view, so it's not necessarily accurate. Over a 4-year period, he was evaluated by psychologists and psychiatrists over 47 times and was found to be in suitable mental health. He reported experiencing hallucinations, anxiety, and depressive symptoms, but all of which would be expected for a person in a normal state of mind and being held in solitary confinement. Ultimately, the doctors found that he was completely fine. Well, fine under his situation. Basically, he was acting as expected for a person without any prior mental illness who had been locked up in the way that he was. It should be said that the violent murders that were committed at the hands of Terrible Tom are the exact reason why there are supermax prisons around today. Because of him, it literally normalized locking up violent offenders in small, isolated cells and just losing the keys. I mean, he turned into a serial killer, basically, behind bars, and he was already serving multiple life sentences. What incentive did he have to change or even stop? So, in addition to his 3 murders and collection of life sentences, all of this went down behind bars. His disciplinary record includes assaults on 3 different staff members, threats against staff members, an escape attempt by posing as a U.S. Marshal, the discovery of weapons including not 1 but 2 hacksaw blades, handcuff keys, and 2 lockpicks tucked away in his booty. All of that, though, occurred prior to 1988, and from 2000 he was rated as being a low-risk violence and mentally stable inmate. But it wasn't because he magically became a model citizen. It was because his life was so restricted, remember his undies? that he wasn't able to engage in any of those aggressive or malicious behaviors. I mean, according to him, in an interview that he gave back in the 90s, he said that he was a changed man. After being locked up for so long, he said, "I didn't come here a killer, but in here, you learn to hate." Basically deflecting any responsibility for the lives that he took. He blamed all of those people around him. Also, according to Terrible Tommy, he said that he had been a model inmate since he was locked up alone in 1983, and after 25 years, he was a new man. He said, "I just have some more self-control now. After 25 years of yoga, meditation, studying Buddhism, and taking some anger management classes," he was convinced that he was a new man. Although, I'm not sure that fixes anything, especially if you can't be trusted with taking a step outside your cell without being chained up. After 36 years in solitary confinement, Terrible Tommy met his end after complications from heart surgery. He's still considered the #1 criminal that has served the longest amount of time in solitary confinement in the US prison system. Thank you so much for watching. Your support really means a lot to me. Please be sure to subscribe and hit that bell to get all notifications. Until next time, stay safe.